We as humans do not like to get uncomfortable. We like to be comfortable, all snug as a bug in a rug. We like to be comfortable. However, in order to grow, we have to get uncomfortable. In order to do God's purpose, we have to get uncomfortable. Anybody God has ever called on in the Bible had to get out of their comfort zone. And a lot of them did not want to. A lot of them did not want to. Just like you don't want to, just like I didn't want to. We don't like to get uncomfortable. Jonah, he ran. That's how he did not want to do that. He ran, and he ended up in a whale. Not good. Simon was told to go and fish in the deep sea, the deep water. He didn't want to do it. He made every excuse in the world. He was told to go fish in the deep water. And when he finally stopped making excuses and went and fished in the deep water, he caught all kinds of fish. Now, Esther was a Jew, and she had never told her husband, the king, that she was a Jew. And she had come to a time where she had to tell him so that she could save her people. She had to be shaken in her boots. She was so uncomfortable. This was the scariest thing she'd ever done. And yet, she'd done it. And it turned out for the good. And she saved her people. Hallelujah. God had asked Moses to lead the Israelites out of slavery. He's like, not me, Lord. No, you got the wrong person. I stutter, Lord. You know this. I'm not one to go up in front of the king. I'm just not. You got the wrong person. And God said, oh, no, I don't. And you're going. You ain't got a choice. So Moses had to get out of his comfortability. And he had to go in front of the Egyptian king and speak on God's behalf and the Israelites' behalf. And you got to believe that he was scared, because this king was nothing nice. Nothing nice. And he had to do these things that God had called him to do. He didn't have a choice. He had to get out of his comfortability. He had to get out of his comfort zone. And by doing so, he led the Israelites across the Red Sea and into their promised land. Hallelujah. Into the wilderness. Sorry, not the promised land. Into the wilderness. And he had to get uncomfortable to do this. That was a very big feat. And he did it. Now Joseph's brothers were jealous of him. And then they took his coat and they sold him into slavery and told his family he was dead. You think that he wasn't uncomfortable? Oh, heck yeah. Here he is, and all nice and comfy with his family. The next minute, he's in slavery with people he don't know telling him what to do and how to do it and when to do it. And then he gets an opportunity to interpret a dream for the king and changed his entire life around. Then he becomes a governor of Egypt, and he saved a country from famine. But if he hadn't got uncomfortable, he would not have done that. David, he was a shepherd boy. And he was called by God to go up and take on the Philistine giant. The one who was never defeated. The one every man in town was scared of and would not try to fight. And here is this little young shepherd boy. God gives him a slingshot and a rock and tells him, go take on that giant. You think he wasn't scared? He had to be scared. But he had to put his trust in God. When God calls you to do something, you got to do it. He was definitely uncomfortable and not in his comfortable zone. And then there was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. I don't think I said that right, but that's the best I can do. They were thrown into the fire because they refused to bow down to the king. Now, going into that fire, you know they were thinking they were goners. They were very uncomfortable. They were freaking out. But they walked into that fire And the whole time God was with them. And they walked out of that fire with just some ashes on them. Talk about uncomfortable. Then there was the prophet Daniel, who was thrown into the lion's den because he had prayed to God. You know that walking into that lion's den, thrown into that lion's den, he's thinking, oh God, you got to get me out of this. I can't do this on my own. Oh my gosh. Talk about being uncomfortable. That had to be the most uncomfortable position. You know it did. He had to be freaking out. And yet, he got uncomfortable and he walked out of that lion's den unharmed because he trusted God and got out of his comfort zone. And he was taken out of that lion's den in perfect good shape. Hallelujah. Then there was the disciples. The 12 disciples, remember them? They even were in the movie Chosen. The 12 disciples had to leave everything they knew. Everything they knew. Everything that was comfortable to them. And walk with Jesus. And they weren't even sure he was the Messiah yet. But they were called to do it by God. And they knew they were called to do it. And they did it. And you know they had to be scared. They were leaving everything they knew. Their mothers, their fathers, their wives, their jobs. Everybody's telling them they're crazy. And yet they did it. They had to leave their uncomfortable zone. Their comfort zone, sorry. They had to leave their comfortable zone and get uncomfortable to grow. And not only did they get to learn under the Messiah, then after teaching them everything the Messiah knew, he sends them out again on their own, 2 by 2, to go out and heal and profess his word to unknown territories. Talk about uncomfortable. They had to be completely out of their comfort zone to do that. They didn't want to, but Jesus called them to do it. And they did what they were called to do. And by doing this, they were able to heal people and turn people on to who Jesus was and what he was doing, and that they were saved. They saved people. They were able to get more followers. Hallelujah. Then there was John the Baptist, who was thrown in prison. That couldn't have been any comfortable. Yet that man preached his word everywhere he went. Nothing stopped him. Nothing stopped him. Even uncomfortable circumstances. It didn't stop him. Then there was Peter, who was thrown into prison. And the angel came and told him, walk past these guards so you can be free. Follow me and walk past these guards. You know he had to be uncomfortable, thinking they're going to see me. How am I going to get past here? But he does it, and he's freed. And then there was Joshua. Joshua led the Israelites to the promised land. But to get them to the promised land, he had to conquer the Canaanites, the Jericho, Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites to get him to the promised land. And he didn't think he could defeat all of these people, but God told him, you can. You're just going to have to do it. And as uncomfortable as it was, he went out and did what God told him, and he led these people to their promised land. Now, a lot of times we don't want to get out of our comfort zone because we're afraid. But if you don't get out of your comfort zone, how are you ever going to grow? And how are you ever going to do what God has called you to do? If he put a dream in your heart, he's called you to get out of your comfort zone. So what are you waiting for? I know, I'm the same way. I don't like to get out of my comfort zone. But we have to get out of our comfort zone. And we have to get uncomfortable. And we have to discipline ourselves to reach that goal so that we can go on to reach the next goal. Because as long as we're comfortable, we're never growing. Anyway, hope this blesses you. Have a good day.